Guys, today we'll be live with the one and only Chris Jefferson, a phenomenal investor based out of Richmond, Virginia. He's been in the game for 11 years. Most of you already know the name. He's absolutely crushing it. Started as a builder, doing a lot of wholesaling, now doing a lot of creative wraps and buy and holds. We'll talk about everything he's been doing pre-COVID and now post-COVID, and how his business is blowing up and how his brand is absolutely blowing up across the whole country as well. Stay tuned. Chris, welcome to the show.
What's going on, man? What's going on? How you guys doing?
Not bad.
Always good, man. Always good over here. Although I think I might have a step up. I'm down in Florida. I don't know, Chris. Where you at right now?
Look, man. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, so you definitely have a step up on me right now. it's too cold.
Sorry. Don't worry.
So Chris, first of all, thanks for coming on the show today. I mean, we were trying to get you for months. First of all, I guess we should start with sort of how you got in the game and how it's gone from then to now.
Yeah, so I'll say this in like a condensed version, right? My real estate journey was long and grueling, which I feel like most of them are. You know, one thing I talk about in some of my content, right, is that like that first deal, that first step is like the most agonizing step ever. You know, just getting to the point of just doing that one transaction that you focus all that energy, effort on. So my start, I'm 34. Back in 2004, which when I say the number, it seems like a really long time ago. I graduated high school, right? And I graduated high school. I got arrested my senior year of school, at school, for marijuana possession, right? And so I'm thinking I'm getting ready to go play basketball. I'm all right. I'm not great, so it's not like I'm getting ready to go D1. Maybe D2, but I'm getting some D3 looks. D3, you don't even get a scholarship, right? They give you like grant money to try to get by. And so I'm looking at that, and I have this realization, right? I realized that, I feel like we all go through similar realizations where you have things that you are focused on, you have things that you're passionate about when you're younger. For me, it was sports. And I had to have the conversation with myself at 17 years old. Hey, is this something that's going to pay you for the rest of your life? If it's not, you need to make an adjustment, right? You need to search out something else. So, I was really interested in business. I started participating in DECA, different business competitions, and was having a lot of success nationally with that. And so I felt like I had a knack for business. And so, I'm like, how do I start a business, right? So I graduated high school, start working at FedEx overnight, loading tractor trailers. Shout out to anybody doing that, man. That is not fun. All right. So I'm loading tractor trailers up, and I hear about real estate. Okay. I'm going to fast forward through some years, but I hear about real estate. I start bird dogging. A guy up in you guys' area, or Josh up in your area, I believe, Vernon Vaughn. I used to collect sneakers, buy and sell sneakers. So I'm having a conversation with Vernon Vaughn through this website called Nike Talk one day. And I click on his bio. We're talking about sneakers. I click on his bio, and it says something like he had posted a check on his website for $34,000, and he was giving away a Jaguar. And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell is this dude doing? Right? Like, this dude's posted a check for $34,000. And he's giving away an entire car, And so at the time I was doing some bird dogging, and I remember asking him what he was doing, and he said that he was doing wholesaling. And I started looking into it, but didn't really click because I thought it was really cool to be a bird dog and for people to give you like $250, $500 a pop. I don't even think bird dogging is a term anymore. But, this is, 13, 14 years ago it was. So I started on that journey. Fast forward quite a bit. I meet somebody who I start for 2 years straight, around almost 2 years. This guy was an investor in my market. He was getting older. Anything he asked me to do, I went and did it. Meet contractors, collect rent, find deals, just did anything he asked. And he never paid me to do any of this stuff. I came across a deal one day. I asked him if he wanted to buy it. He said, "Hey, Chris, why don't we buy it together?" I told him, "Hey, I'm 21 years old, man. I don't have any money to be able to, buy a house with you, that kind of thing." And so he says, "Hey, look, you already know what to do. I'll put the money up." So he put the money up, purchased the property. We held on to it as a rental. So we JV'd it as a rental, participated a little bit in the refinance. From there, I started wholesaling a lot. But I quickly, and I say this, and hopefully it makes sense to people, I quickly made it my first mistake. Okay. So my first mistake was that I quickly went and transitioned into fix and flip. So I started doing a lot of fix and flip. This is back in 2010. And so by 2012, we were doing, 30, 40 houses a year. Those first 2 years, fix and flip. Now, the reason I call that my first mistake, it wasn't really a mistake, right? Like I made money and all that cool stuff. But the mistake in that was, and I talk about this a lot, you either wholesale or fix and flip for active income. Like that's the point, right? Like you need active money today to live on. And so I was already getting active income from wholesaling, but then I started pushing into fix and flip. When the reality of it is, this is 2010, right? The buy and hold opportunities at that time were absolutely insane. But that wasn't a focus of mine at that time because I was too, focused in on that active income. But that's kind of how I started, right? Just trying different things, understanding different verticals. I became really good at fixing and flipping. And then I created a big focus in my business on that for many years. And we got into new construction, building a lot of houses, owned some apartments. And in 2017, got knocked in the face. We transitioned the business a little bit in some different ways, the biggest of which being wholesaling and getting back on that very aggressively. And then I ended up on a podcast with Josh and Roger,
There it is. There it is right there. I mean, that's how the story goes.
No doubt.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Well, I mean, I definitely know a lot of folks, myself, that are getting into the wholesale game, and then they slowly try to transition off to the fix and flips because they're like, okay, well, there's more money on that end, or maybe they're just trying to be a little bit more aggressive on the investor side. They're like, look, we're pushing deals, we're making money here. And it's just like I think it was kind of comparing it to how you said being a bird dog to being a wholesaler. Like the money as a bird dog is like here, then you get the money as a wholesaler like here. Then you're thinking, oh, the next step is fix and flip. So I think that's just kind of interesting when people from the outside kind of look at that ladder of progression. But what I guess really my biggest question. So I knew you kind of already brought it up as well. But what really pushed you away from like, look, I'm just going to stay away from like the heavy fix and flips. I'm just going to 100% focus on the wholesaling. Would you say, yeah, like what was the biggest kind of the biggest push where you're like, I'm just done with that whole side?
Yeah. So it's funny, man. I was having this conversation with the guy who mentored me and taught me new construction last night. I talked to him a while. We were catching up. And so, look, so like flashback 2015, we're doing, anywhere to 30, 50 deals a year that are fix and flip and new construction. And at that time, the budgets on those deals were 120,000 plus. So each individual deal had either a build cost or a repair cost of over 120,000, which for anybody fix and flips, that's a heavy load. We had project managers, superintendents. For all intents and purposes, it was an operation, And I started feeling like the fun had kind of gotten sucked out of it. We had so many projects actively going on. I'm on job sites constantly. 26 projects, that's 26 sets of problems, really, really more than that, right? 26 sets of problems, permits, civic association meetings, having to be out in the public locally, trying to get our development projects approved and these different things at Lowe's all the time. And so I kind of felt myself in 2015, kind of on the back end of 2015, really starting to burn out a little bit. And it's funny, I remember around that same time, I was coming back from a trip from Miami. I get on the plane, and one of the biggest developers here locally in Richmond happens to be sitting next to me on the plane. And he says something I'll never forget. He says, "Hey, Chris, it's really great to bump into." He said, "I follow you on Facebook." And I'm like, "Cool, man." I'm like, it's awesome. He said, "I love your work. Your houses are beautiful." He said, "You're going to kill yourself." And I said, I'm like, "Wow." I'm like, "Well, what is that supposed to mean?" And he goes, "Man, you're doing awesome." He goes, "I see you fixing and flipping all over town and doing all these different things." He said, "You're going to run yourself into the ground." He said, "That's not a sustainable business." He goes, "Whoever told you that's a sustainable business, they lied to you." And when he said it at first, I'm kind of like, okay, man. Because at the time, man, I'm rolling in cash. Things are beautiful, all of that, right? It's got its stresses, like I said, but we're doing good. And so I said, "Well, what's your perspective? Like, what would make you say that?" Because again, this guy is, he's got a bunch of Starbucks leases in town and all sorts of things. He's doing quite well. And he said, "Hey, look," he goes, "my business philosophy is I hold on to everything." He goes, "I only sell when I need to infuse cash to buy something else. Or if I need to buy a boat, car, something like that. But aside from that, man," he said, "I never sell anything." And he says, "How many hours do you work a week?" And I said, "Dude, probably like 70 plus right now." And he goes, "I pick my daughter up every day at 2:00. And that kind of just hit me a little bit, man. When I got off the plane, I reflected on the conversation, and I'm just like, dang, I'm like, I can't imagine taking off work at 2:00 every day. Like, it's not even realistic whatsoever. And I had no vision of when it would be realistic. And so I started making some adjustments, and I started looking at what I had going on. And then I get hit by this massive lawsuit. I had a construction business at the time. And, long story short, we get into this beef, right, with this guy we're doing a project for. My attorney tells me at the time, he says, "Chris, you can settle this for $25,000, right?" And I say, "Man, you're absolutely nuts." I'm like, "There's no way paying this guy a dime. We didn't do anything wrong. Tell him to kiss my ass," right? And he's like, "Are you sure?" All right, he says, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro." I'm like, "I'm not cutting a check to this dude, man." And he goes, "All right." He goes, "Probably gonna cost you about 50 grand to fight it." I'm like, "Cool, don't care," right? Well, it didn't end up costing me 50 grand. All right, it ended up costing me quite a few multiples in a couple of years of 50 grand. Now I ended up winning. So I still ended up winning, but it cost me a whole lot of cash. All right. And so it created some cash issues in my business for me in 2017 because I'm kicking off a bunch of money to attorneys every month, and you're expensing a lot of energy. And we don't talk enough about our own internal energy, but I'm expensing a lot of energy at that time between projects, legal stuff, all these different things. And so I had to take a step back. And this was in 2017. I took a big step back. And I call it having a bird's eye view of what I had going on in my life, personally, professionally, really everything. And so one of the first things I did, actually the office building that we're in now, the owner of the building is a consultant, her and her husband, Harvard educated folks, way smarter than me, right? So when we first got the office, I'd heard about these folks, this consulting company before from some people locally. And I didn't really think too much of it because at the time you think you know everything and you're flying by the seat of your pants and everything's going right. So one day I walk into the office. I go into their office. The wife is on the phone. She had her door open. It's my policy, if the door is open, somebody can walk in, right? So I never talked to this lady before, but I walked into her office and sat down, waited for her to get off the phone. She said, "Hey, how can I help you?" And I dress like this, right? Like I'm not one of these business guys in like suits and shit. You know what I mean? So She's probably looking at me like, wait a second, like what the hell is going on? Yeah. And so she gets out the phone and she says, hey, like, can I help you? And I said, you actually can, And she said, I heard a lot about you guys. Heard you guys have helped out a lot of people in town. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, what do you need help with? And I said, if I can be honest with you, I have no idea. I literally have no clue. And I said, but here's what I do know. I know that I've built my business up to be a great, beautiful business based on what I know right now. And I said, I know if I want to get it to the next step, the next level, I need to be having some conversations with people that are more intelligent than me. And it doesn't bother me to say that, right? And so I said, I've heard that you guys have built up a lot of companies in town. I want to interact with you and see how you can help my business. So they took me on as a client. They came in, took a look at the different businesses that I had, the different things that I was into at the time. And one of the things they said is we're going through my finances. And she asked me about my wholesaling business. And she says, hey, like, what's this? And I'm like, look, I don't need any help with that. Like, that's just a business that we do for like extra cash flow. Like, I need help on this stuff over here. And she says, well, if that company's making that much money, why are you doing all this other stuff? And nobody had really ever framed it like that. And so when she said it, I took a look at the other things that I was doing, and I did not have a legitimate answer for that question. There was no legit answer for it, right? Because if you follow the rule of law, right, in business, right, like we do business for ROI, and the ROI was massive inside of wholesaling, but I had a construction company, fix and flip, we're doing apartments, we're doing all this other stuff. And so this is when I realized the philosophy that I have now, and I mentioned it, when we first came on. See, I look at things a bit differently now, and I look at them from the perspective of, because you talked right just a second ago, Roger, about that ascension ladder. We all have this perspective when we come in that we're going to go, I'm going to start wholesale, and then I'm going to do fix and flip, and I'm going to do rental, commercial, blah, 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 right? What I realized is, yes, you can do all those things, and it's dope, but when it comes to fix and flip and wholesale, and we microed or macroed into that part of my business, what the realization was is that you only do those things for active income. Like the entire intent and purpose is to get passive income and build assets. Yeah. Fix and flip, wholesale is not going to do that for you, but it can give you the active income to be able to participate in passive investments. But if you can do wholesaling and you can do it well, not everybody can, but if you can do it well and make great velocity of returns from it, why am I fixing and flipping so many houses a year with these massive budgets? Doesn't make sense, right? So I got brash, all right? I sold off 26 properties, all right? Now, these were properties that were either in my pipeline of development. Some of them were lots, some of them were houses. Everybody in town at the time thought I was nuts, right? Like I hear these whispers, right? Like, oh my God, Roger, can you believe, like, I think Chris is going broke. He's selling off a bunch of houses and maybe the guy's going bankrupt. And I would hear this stuff. And I'd just be like, all right, like, it's cool, because I knew the method to the madness was, wait, I can create active income wholesaling at a much more rapid pace, not suffer from burnout, not be stressed out every single day, not feel like I'm losing my hair. Thankfully, I still have that, right? And I said, what I can do is let me stop doing so many fix and flips. It's not sustainable. I thought back to that conversation on the plane. I'm like, man, it's not actually sustainable. Like, because then I started thinking to myself, who is actually doing fix and flip at scale? Big scale, right? Like 100 plus houses a year. There's a few companies out there, but those are like corporation type companies, not mom and pop shops, micro or smaller businesses like myself, right? And so when I looked at that, I really put a bigger focus back in wholesaling. That started to shoot up like crazy. It was a perfect time for it in the market. Thankfully, since I first started my business, we've always done our own direct to seller marketing. We never stopped doing that. So I was still up to date, still aware of what new strategy for as far as getting direct to seller leads, things of that nature. So it wasn't a really difficult transition, but that's kind of what that looked like. I know that's a long-winded answer, but I mean, that's kind of what that all looked like for me in terms of lowering the large amount of projects that I was doing, being more intelligent about my strategy, the type of investments. So we still do fix and flip, but instead of doing $125,000 plus budgets, now we don't have a budget that's over 40 grand. And so the ease of project is so much different between 40,000 and 120,000. And so we made those adjustments. We do a lot of wholesaling now. I remember specifically, I had a house that I had just built that I was selling. I was selling for 450, and that was the top of the market. All right. And I remember, like, I talk about ego a lot, right? And I talk about how ego is the enemy. And so I remember, this is my ego at the time. I'm doing more houses than everybody in town. I'm doing the biggest houses. I'm setting the comps. I know there's some people who can relate. All right. That's ego, right? You feel yeah, Roger and Josh, they sold their houses for $375. I'm listing at $450, man. Screw those guys. And so, I'm doing that. And I remember looking at comps, man. I look at comps and I see houses that are selling for $350 and $375, not fixed up. No. And I say to myself, wait a second. If people are buying those, why am I going through all this effort to build these brand new houses and make them look like something off of HGTV? Doesn't make any sense. If I'm staying true to creating active income, if I'm staying true to velocity of ROI, that I'm doing something wrong, right? So then I realized, like, hey, these direct seller leads that we're getting, we can actually sell these for profit by listing them on the MLS. Because if they're livable, if we can get them into a habitable condition, there's somebody that wants to be in a neighborhood that costs $450 to get into, that they can get into it for $350, $325. There's somebody willing to do that. And so we started buying a lot of these properties, wholesaling it, right? Doing minimal repairs to get them livable and functional. And we started putting those on the MLS. And, needless to say, it's a great business model. And so we made those adjustments. And now we're doing a bunch of different things. But that's kind of really how that transition kind of really took off.
So, Chris, a lot of times, listen to your story. It's almost the exact same story Roger and I have. I mean, we decided also actually later than you, unfortunately, but we decided right around the time COVID hit that what you just said is exactly what we had discovered. We had 9 luxury lot builds that we were about to do in Northern Virginia, and we're like, maybe building's not for us anymore. The long cash conversion cycle. I mean, a Northern Virginia builder on average makes about 150 to 200K per new build. But when you take it out over 12 months, you're talking like 12 to 15,000 a month. You're not even doing one wholesale a month. Yep. And one wholesale a month, you're barely breaking the sweat versus even managing one of those properties. So unfortunately, I already lost the hair, and I listened too late for the advice that you just gave. So if you just listen to the last 5 or 10 minutes, man, take advice sooner. The one question I did have is, so the ones that you are taking down, that you're spending the $40K to renovate, what is your maximum sort of time frame that you're willing to take on for that type of project?
So beautiful question, man. If I can't be in and out in 90 days, I will not touch it. I have zero interest in it whatsoever. And that just comes from experience. And what I mean by that, people hear me talk about this and I don't know if they understand. I talk about runway a lot. I was at a mastermind a couple years back, and I remember hearing somebody say, because guys that have been in this a minute, like you guys, we've been speculating that the market's going to crash every year for the past 10 years. You know what I mean? And so we were having one of those conversations, like, I think it's going to crash in 2018. You know what I mean? And the guy says, hey, Chris, what's your runway? I know you're doing a lot of projects. And I'm like, runway? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, what's your exit runway? He goes, if the world goes to shit today, all right, the stock market is crashing, the real estate market is crashing, the economy is crashing, unemployment shooting through the roof. How long will it take you to liquidate? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that was 12 to 18 months was my liquidation. That's what it would take me to liquidate raw land that had not been developed, partially built or renovated houses, all these different things. And so when I got home, I had to take a hardcore look at my business, and I realized that I don't want to have any runway capacity past 90 days. So if everything goes to shit right now, aside from stuff that I'm holding on to, I'm out. I'm out clean in 90 days. I'm not stressed. I'm not any of that. And I've been very intentional about that. My runway will get larger or longer once the market cycles fully down. But who knows when that's going to be? So my play right now is to stay tight within that 90-day window. I know that I can get in and out of investments. I know that I'm buying them at a really low price because I'm buying direct to seller. So I've got some buffer to deal with some fluctuation in pricing or taking a little bit of a hit and still be profitable. But yeah, I mean, if I can't be in and out in 90 days, man, I have absolutely zero interest in it at all.
I'll tell you, the questions are pouring in from the audience, and we'll definitely get to some of those next. So guys, be patient. We'll get your questions answered. But before we get to those, one of the questions, so when you transition from building back to wholesaling, I mean, Roger and I and the rest of our team, we see all sorts of videos of you closing deals. You're like one of the top closers in the country. What are the skills that you see that you needed to either improve or work on or teach your team members to make that transition back to wholesaling?
Man, you guys got some good questions on here, man. I like it. All right, so this is actually a really great question. So here's the first thing that I realized when I started wholesaling heavy again. So I started out, like I said, man, like I got kind of in the mix heavily 2009, 2010, as far as wholesaling is concerned. And back then, it was like a paper pencil business. And what I mean by that, it's like licking stamps, licking envelopes, handwriting letters on Friday nights, buying a $300 printer because that's all you can afford, and putting terrible ink in it and trying to print these things out to hope it looks like real handwriting. You're doing like all of that back then. Like it was all by hand, Now I used to knock on doors. I mean, all that stuff, right? Cold calling before I even knew it was actually cold calling. Like we were just calling people if they would, sell us their house, right? And so, as I transitioned back into wholesaling heavily, I realized very, very fast and early that it had turned into like a tech business. It's a system and process business driven by tech is what it is. And so I recognized that pretty quickly. And I realized that, I can wholesale from my office. I don't have to go to all these houses. I don't have to do all this stuff. And I remember this is when wholesaling over the phone had like first got hot. I'm sure you guys remember that time period, right? Like everybody started talking about it. We're buying John Martinez's stuff and all this kind of stuff. And I realized like, wait, we can close these people over the phone. I'm like, shit, man, I can talk, right? Like I can get on the phone. Like that's light work. You know what I mean? And so we started going crazy with cold calling. We were spending $2,500 a week, a little bit roughly around that, or a little bit more in direct mail at the time. And I'll be honest, man, I hated spending that money every week. It used to drive me absolutely crazy. I'm not going to say who we were doing it through, but we used to spend way too much money on direct mail. And so we started making these phone calls. And I think this is around late 2017. We started getting aggressive on the phone calls. And man, like stuff was churning. Like this is before everybody was going cold call crazy, I mean, we were crushing it with cold calling. And then I found out about text messaging, shortly after that. And, it's a little different now, but at that time when we started texting aggressively, that was like printing money basically, and so we started going really aggressive on that. And yeah, man, we just kind of made that transition. We realized that like it's really a system and process and tech business. And so here's what I tell everybody now. I talk to my students about this. I talk publicly about this. Everybody's scared of the phone, right? Like it's just the truth, right? People are scared of me on the phone. I hear like I got students that tell me like they get on the phone, their hand starts to shake, they're sweating, all this shit. And I get that. Shout out to all my students and you family in here. I get it, makes sense, understand. But for me, the premise is always extremely simple. All right. If I want the things that I say that I want, I'm willing to do the things that I need to do. So if my why, I posted this question this morning in my group, what's your why and is it big enough? Because that's the actual question, right? If your why isn't big enough to overcome any fear, then you gotta reevaluate your why. Because my whys would make me run through any wall, literally, right? No fear. And if I had any inch of fear, I'd run through that. Because the things that I want are more important to me than any set of fear. So to answer your question about the skill set, I truly believe it comes down to your skill set on the phone. It doesn't matter if you're doing RVM marketing. It doesn't matter if you're doing direct mail marketing. It doesn't matter if you're doing cold call, text message. It literally doesn't matter. At some point, you have to get on a phone call with this person. You have to close them, and you got to talk to them. So, this thought process of I can avoid talking to people on the phone by sending RVMs, by sending text messages. It sounds cool, but the reality of it is you're still not going to do deals. Because once you get on the phone, once that person is ready to transition from text, once they call back from your RVM, once they respond to your direct mail piece, you have to communicate with them, and you have to communicate with strategy. And you got to be intentional about that communication. And so I think that we've gotten into an environment, because of all the tech that's available, where people don't actually understand. My students know I'm preaching to them because I talk about this all the time. That if you are not being intentional about developing a phone skill set, then your window is going to be small, and your ability to talk on the phone is going to convert other things in your life too. When you go to raise private money, you got to know how to talk to somebody. You got to know how to communicate. You got to know how to call somebody up and ask them for a loan that might not even know you. And you got to be able to have that conversation. It can help you in your personal relationships as far as communicating. And it's just all these different things that it could do. And so my encouragement to anybody watching this is stop running from the phone. Embrace your fears. Fears are normal. We all have them in some shape or form. But like, I ask myself this all the time when I think about anything that I might be fearful of. Is it worth running the other way? Like, what does the opposite way look like? If I'm in a shitty situation right now, if I'm not happy with my life, if I can't pay my bills, if I can only go on one vacation a year, right? Whatever the case might be. And I watch everybody on Instagram every day. They're riding around in Rolls Royces, they're going on vacations, they're doing this, private jets and all this different stuff. If that's what I want, but I'm not willing to walk through any sort of fear to obtain it, my opinion is you don't deserve it. Because you have to be willing to force your way through fear. Because it's like, I don't know about you gentlemen, right? But like when I was a kid, right, like for a minute, it's a little scared of the dark. Like for like a quick second, you know what I mean? Not like a year, like 6 months, right? And I remember my mom just being like, look, if the boogeyman in here, just gonna have to let him get you. All right. And I remember thinking, I didn't cuss at the time, but I remember thinking like, dang, like I gotta let the boogeyman get me? Like, that's crazy. Like, just leave the nightlight on. You know what I'm saying? But I had to force my way through that fear. What did I realize? There's no such thing as the boogeyman. All right. We got to start pushing ourselves through these fears. But again, to answer your question, the skill set on the phone is the most critical thing in your business.
I hear you. I definitely would say I don't trust anybody that didn't turn off the basement lights and then run up the stairs. There's no doubt. There's nothing you can say. You definitely did that, and you're a liar.
I know I did, man. I know I did.
There's something wrong with you. Go ahead. I don't trust people like that. But no, I 1000% agree that you got to be able to. Communication's everything, whether it's for anybody that's out there wholesaling. And I guess I should have kind of led with this. I know, Chris, we're focusing on you, but for those that don't know me, I'm the director of Dispo for Josh's company. So my job is talking to, sometimes I'll talk to sellers as well, but talking to buyers. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, if there's no communication, if you're not communicating, if there's a misunderstanding on any side, the deal's going to fall through. So having that skill set to be able to communicate, be on the phone, talk to people, do not be scared. If you don't recognize that number, sometimes you just have to pick up that phone, because you don't know who's on the other end, what they want. And it could be the difference between a deal or no deal. So I absolutely agree with that. One thing I wanted to bring up, there was a really good question in the comments, and I actually wanted to do a two-part question for this one. They asked, what was your most successful wholesale deal or the one that you're most proud of? So I thought that was a really good question, but also we always talk about the most successful, right? What was the best deal? What made you lots of money? Get people amped up. But also I want to keep it a little bit grounded after that and say, what would you consider like your biggest business failure? Like, what was your biggest, like, I dropped the ball on that? So let's hit the successful one first, and then I'm going to follow up with that one.
So my most successful deal is not the one that I'm most proud of, because my pride isn't placed in profit. So my most financially successful deal was like around 140 something thousand, I believe, on a wholesale, which obviously is cool, right? That was a great deal a couple of years ago. Now, the one that I'm most proud of is I bought a house from a lady, which we're still friends on Facebook to this day. I think like 6 years ago. She was getting ready to get foreclosed on. She had a disabled son, and she called me up like at like really the 9th hour, like a week before foreclosure. And we had to rush and fight to get it done. I was able to buy the property from her and pick it up. We were able to sell it and make really good money after we bought it. But I remember, because this conversation a lot is always like, I hear people say stuff like, you feel like you're taking from these sellers when you buy houses and da 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 da. And I remember how happy she was, how thankful she was that I had purchased the property from her, saved her from a situation of having this black mark of foreclosure on her credit and things of that nature. And yes, we made really good money from the property. I think we ended up, wholesaling it, or I bought it and then put on MLS. I think we made around 50 some thousand from that at that time. But what was more rewarding was knowing that she wouldn't be, hurt financially. She had a disabled child. She'd be in a position where she got some money back. She was able to move on, get better care for her son, things of that nature. And that definitely felt good.
Awesome. Chris, part of the recommended viewing material in our company, and Roger knows this, Richard knows this, everybody else here knows this, is they got to watch Chris Jefferson close deals on YouTube. So that's part of what we do here. I was curious to ask you this question. I've seen you myself close so many deals, either in person or on the phone. What is sort of the Chris Jefferson sales process, just sort of at a very high level? Like, what in a nutshell do you sort of?
Yeah, so I prefer to close over the phone. So our strategy is kind of simple in a sense, I guess. So we've got cold callers, right? They make those calls or they facilitate text messages, respond back to RVMs, whatever the case might be. We do not make offers on the first touch. So when a seller first comes on the phone with us, the intent in no shape or form is to make an offer. We may make a price anchor, potentially, not even always on every single one, but we may make a price anchor on that conversation, which is just to set the temperature, kind of see where the seller's at, that kind of thing. But our entire goal on that first call is to get and gather as much information as possible. What's the timeline to sell? What's the motivation? What's the pain point? What's the condition of the property? Are they actually motivated? Just because somebody wants to sell doesn't mean they're a motivated seller. And we try to ISO and get all that information in that initial call. The importance of doing that, and we've done it a lot of different ways. We used to make offers right on the first call. We've done all these different strategies. I like this one the best because it's an unsuspecting sale. What we're doing in that initial call is we're getting all the information needed to negotiate later. I think what people miss is when you start talking math, when you start talking numbers, you immediately take the conversation into negotiating. Everybody tenses up. The way we talk to each other is going to get different. Going to be a little bit more guarded, a little bit more defensive. So we prevent getting to that point. The entire intent up front is to make them feel comfortable, get as much information as you can from them as humanly possible. And my students know this move. I'll give it here. I haven't talked about this anywhere else, I don't think. But I do what we call the pullback. We do a pullback. We call it the pullback method. All right. And so we're looking to eliminate every single potential rebuttal. And so when we pull back, I just talked to a seller like 30 minutes ago and did it actually. We're asking questions like, why don't you just list it with a realtor? The seller I just talked to 30 minutes ago, she's telling me, I'm trying to buy 4 houses from her right now. And so she's telling me, well, 2 of them, I could just fix them up. I got a lot of equity. I could do this. I could do that. So I asked her, I said, hey, that sounds great. Why don't you just do that? I said, if you can make more money, you don't need me, Now, I know she's in foreclosure, all right? I said, look, you don't need me. Why don't you just go ahead and fix them up? I said, I can refer you some great contractors. No, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to get this taken care of really quickly, da. And so we're constantly just looking to eliminate rebuttals in that initial call. The reason that's really important is because what happens when you get into negotiating? That's when people start providing you their rebuttals. If we've already eliminated them in a previous conversation, it's pretty easy for me to remind you, Josh, that we talked earlier. Well, look, Josh, when we talked earlier today or talked yesterday, whenever, you had mentioned, man, that, that you might do some work to it. I remember asking you, Josh, though, is that something that you wanted to do? And you said at the time that you didn't have the capacity because you're out of town. I mean, what changed since yesterday? Yeah. And see, a lot of people are scared to put sellers in those spots where they have to answer the question. You got to place the seller in a space where they have to respond to what they said. Well, you told me that you had no interest whatsoever in listening with the realtor. Josh, I'm curious why you'd want to now. I mean, is there an issue with the price? It's always the price. They just don't want to say that it's the price, So in that first call, we're gathering as much information as possible. And then we're setting it up for what we call a handoff. So when the call is handed off, it's handed off to a closer. The closer's intent is to then get that person on the phone, have all the information necessary, and create a closed scenario. And that closed scenario obviously is getting the property under contract at a reasonable price so that we can sell it. But we do a handoff method. So there's an initial call to gather information. Most times we will make a price anchor on that call. So I'll say something about that really quickly. The intent of the price anchor is not for it to be your offer. I feel like people miss this, right? When we're making a price anchor, it's just to start the conversation to negotiate. So once we've gathered all the information, got everything that we need, now we want to drop our price anchor, but we already know that the seller's going to hate our price anchor. Like we know that going into it. So there's no reason to act like they're not. Some wholesalers, I feel like they drop that price anchor, that lower price up front, and they're like crossing their fingers and praying like, oh man, this guy took this offer, I'm gonna make 50 grand. It's not realistic, man. Not realistic whatsoever. Right? Our goal in dropping the price anchor is we simply want them to get ruffled. All right. Because if they get ruffled, we know that we're low. All right. But we know they got a number. Okay. Because no seller gives the asking price hardly ever. And so we go low, but we frame up the fact that we're going to go low. All right. So we use what's called the finance manager method. So we'll say things like, hey, Roger, look, I spoke with my finance manager before I gave you a call. Right now I've only got approval to go up to 70,000. We really like the property. We're looking at 2 other properties in the neighborhood. And Roger, I'll kind of be honest with you, man. I don't get paid unless we buy something. And your property is in much better condition than the other 2 that we're taking a look at. So we really would prefer to buy yours and work something out with you to be a win-win situation. I'm not sure if we can get there. Again, right now, 70 is just what I've got approved. I'm pretty sure that we can come up past that, but I need to get some information from you first. That's why I need to talk with you on the phone for 5 or 10 minutes today, so I could get that information and really kind of talk to my finance manager and see what is doable for us on our end. Roger, is there a number that kind of makes sense for you? And based on what we said as far as the 70, that I could take to my finance manager and see what we could do to kind of get this figured out. And so we roll into it that way. But what I'm doing is I'm framing up the fact that I'm getting ready to give you a little number. I already know you're not going to like it. So I'm taking the pressure of frustration off of myself. And I'm telling you that that's placed on a finance manager that has to approve that. But I'm also telling you, hey, Roger, I'm not saying that 70 is the best we can do.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm approved to do right now. But I'm willing to go to bat for you, man. I'm willing to go see what we can get done and see what we can do to increase our price so that it's a fair deal all around and we're all walking away shaking hands and happy with how this goes. But things like that help you pull that number out of the seller for sure.
No, I think that's really good. And you didn't, doing that pullback, wrapping up in it as well. Like, look, I know you're not going to take that. You're kind of pulling back for a lot of folks. I definitely kind of get a little bit of almost like a John Martinez like vibe, where he talks a lot about the no. I mean, for a lot of folks out there that are watching, obviously follow Chris. Make sure you're watching his methods, learning a lot from this as well. So, I mean, that's something that we also learned on our end, like the Chris Voss, like the negotiating. John Martinez is out there. There's a lot of great information out there to learn from, and I honestly think that finance manager method is brilliant right there. Like, you're taking the pressure off you, and you're like, look, this is what they're telling me our numbers at. I can get you more, or I just don't know, but this is what I'm being told. So I think I love that right there. I might have to borrow that.
Hey, now take it, man. Hey, listen.
If I get the deal, I'm sending you a text. I'm just letting you know.
Nah, hey, no doubt, man. I want to shout out my guy too, man. Real estate Diddy, Keith Everett. He's somebody. Him and I are good friends. We've talked over the years, and he's a cold call assassin like myself, and we always kind of share best practices, things of that nature. And I remember when I first started doing the finance manager piece, I heard him start talking about it too. And I'm like, damn, man, you got a nice little spin on that. That might be a little better than mine. Let me remix those bars a little bit and kind of combine it to what I'm doing on the phones, man. But yeah, I mean, we've gotten some great education. John Martinez, Keith, a bunch of other folks, man. I'm really big on buying information, soaking up information. For me, if I can spend $5,000, $10,000, more than that, if I can get just one thing that's going to help my business, like that one little piece, it's going to be worth it because the money that I'm going to make from that is going to pay itself back 10x.
Go ahead.
I think before we're out of time here, we got to get to Chris's buy and hold portfolio building, like how he's doing some creative stuff here. Chris, before we got on the show, you're talking about like adding deals to your portfolio and doing some like contract for deeds, some wrap type deals. A lot of our audience may not even know exactly what a wrap even is or how that works. Could you sort of explain like how your passive income side is growing as well?
Yeah, sure, man. I'm really bullish on that right now. So how that started, all right? So rentals for me before, I only wanted to buy stuff that was under $75,000, which I still do. Only want to buy stuff under $75,000 as a straight rental, right? So it's me as a landlord direct to a tenant. I like properties priced $75,000 under in my market because I know they're going to have values around $150,000 to $200,000. So they have a lot of appeal to me. So a couple of years ago, I think 2018, I want to say, a friend of mine, a guy named Rich Lennon here in Richmond, Virginia. Shout out to Rich. He kept talking to me about IRAs, man. And he's like, tell me all this stuff about IRAs and how sweet they are, and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, all right. So finally, I go to an event with him hosted by Quest IRA. I go to the event, and my mind is completely blown on some of the strategies that you can implement around an IRA or just in general. And one of the biggest takeaways that I got was the strategy of owner financing or doing wraps, holding mortgages. And the philosophy is basic, right? It's the fact that if I owner finance to somebody else, then I pass the burden of property tax, I pass the burden of repair, all those different things. You know, I don't have to worry about evicting them. I can foreclose on them if necessary, yada, yada, yada. So I learned the strategy, didn't implement it right away. In 2019, I started doing it quite a bit. And now it's something that we lead with when it comes to evaluating something that's going to be passive in the portfolio. So the intent really is simple, right? You know, we focus on absentee owners that are over 60 years old, on their property free and clear. And so we have a big focus on that list in our markets. And what we're doing with those, every offer that we make right now is a two-part offer. So, like, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, there was a three offer method. You know, you had cash offer, seller finance offer, cash, and seller finance offer. People have a big attachment to the price. So if you offer cash, you say 75,000, but then, hey, I can probably do 100,000 seller finance. People are so attached to the number. A lot of times people will go with that seller finance offer, especially in the climate that we're in right now, where we have landlords that are burnt out. They're tired of not being able to evict. They're tired of repairs, things of that nature. You know, seller financing appeals to them quite a bit. So we started doing that method. It works out really well. All we simply do is we'll get a mortgage from the homeowner at closing. They'll seller finance it to us, okay? And so then what we'll do is we'll go and then find somebody else to purchase the property from us, and we'll increase the terms. So if I've got a $5,000 down payment, 3% interest, 30-year amortization, 5-year balloon, I might then go back and sell that property for 20,000 down. So I'll make 15 on that. Instead of 3 or 4% interest, I might mark that up to 6 to 8%. So I'll make money monthly on the spread of interest. All right. And then on the back end, I'm also going to make money because I've increased my sales price. So if I seller financed it for 100 and got 20 down, I might be selling or financing it to somebody else for 150,000. And so then I've also got a principal opportunity when that person then goes to sell that property as well. We'll change the amortization. So instead of it being 30 years, we frequently do 20 years on ours. And then the balloon, all right, and this is important. So on the balloon, we typically try to get a 5 or 7 year balloon on seller financing. Now, if you're wrapping a mortgage to somebody, you do not give them the same balloon that you have, all right? Because if you do, all right, if yours is 5 years, you give them 5 years. Now they get to the bottom of their 5-year window. They've been telling you the whole time they're going to cash it out, da 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 da. Now they can't. Now you don't have any time. All right. So if we've got a 5-year balloon, we'll extend a 4-year balloon. We want to give ourselves at least 12 months runway. We don't know what'll be happening in the market, yada yada yada. So 12 months gives me enough time for sure to figure things out and kind of get the house in order, so to speak. But that's the philosophy around that for sure.
I got you. Well, I think we are almost running out of time, so I think we got time for one more question. I know we got a lot of questions that are over on the comments section. I wish we had more time to answer all those. Those are all great questions. But I think the biggest one for a lot of people that are watching this is as far as for any new wholesaler, anything that can kind of help them with their first deal. What would you say to them? Like, what would you say is kind of the biggest takeaway from all your experience? Like, if something that you could have done differently, if you wish somebody could have gone back and told you for your first deal, these are some of the things that you want to look out for. These are some of the things that you should know. Well, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so I think it's simple to me. I think the biggest thing is I teach this to my students. I talk about this all the time. You know, you got to make this business less complicated. You know, real estate's a business. Everybody likes to sound really smart, talking fancy terminology. You know, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I'm doing that, because it's this ego thing, right? We're all internally competing against each other. All right. The problem with that is it sets the wrong expectation to people that are starting out. This business is super, super simple. Like it might be the most simple business in the world, maybe aside from a lemonade stand. All right. But you know, this is like one of the most easy businesses that you can do. You got to have effort. You got to have some energy to you. All right. But the reality of it is literally simply this. If I'm just starting out, I need a list and I need a phone. All right. The list, and obviously I got to skip trace it, so I need numbers. All right. But then I literally just need a phone. And I know if I got a phone and a list, I can turn some opportunities up. I think when people are getting started, we talked earlier, right, about this being a systems and process tech business now. I think some people get confused by all the available tech. You know, they're looking at all these different tools and, oh, I could buy this, oh, I could buy that. But at a base core level, you need a list, you need phone numbers, and you need a telephone. And if you can focus on that first, and if you can couple that with the fact that you need to talk to sellers on a daily basis, then you're going to convert something. You can have every single tool, you can have the list, you can have the Google Voice phone number we all have when we first start out, right? You can do all that, but if you ain't calling nobody, like if you're not talking to anybody on the phone, it really doesn't matter. So at a core level, when you start out, you got to be intentional about hitting the phone to communicate to some seller, multiple sellers really, on a daily basis. If you can do that foundationally and then build on top of that, then you're going to do a lot of damage in this business. Unfortunately, we had almost 800 students last year. So what that does is it gives you a lot of data. You're able to see a lot of different things, the way people think, the way they evaluate, all these different things. The biggest thing I realized from having so many students is that everybody's trying to avoid talking to sellers on a daily basis. They're focused on getting the tools, focused on watching YouTube, focused on going through every Facebook group and posting the same question in every Facebook group 20 times. Like, they're all focused on that. Everything but actually talking to somebody that might want to sell their house. So here's the problem with that, though. So then you trick your subconscious mind into thinking that you're working and actually doing something for your business to get you closer to your why, when in reality, you aren't actually doing anything at all. So my advice is to focus on providing yourself a situation where you can talk to sellers on a daily basis 110%.
Awesome advice. Before we let you go, we got to ask this question because this is a great question. Ashley Johnson says, what's your favorite rebuttal to hit a difficult seller with?
What's my favorite? This is a good one. All right. What's my favorite rebuttal? All right. So I'm aggressive on the phones when I'm speaking with the seller. So my favorite, thing to hit them with on a rebuttal is creating a sense of urgency. We essentially do this on every single phone call, and it's really important. I think it helps our business quite a bit. So we talked about that first call where you're gathering the information. A seed that we plant in that first call on every call is the fact that we're evaluating and looking at multiple houses in your neighborhood. We've identified 2 or 3 properties. We're talking to them just like we're talking to you. Everybody, all 3 of those folks want to sell us their house, including you. All right. Now, your house is better than those other 2 for sure. And you want more money than them. And I don't mind, Roger, paying you a little bit more money because yours is in better condition than theirs. But this is how I feed my family. This is what I do for a living. So, Roger, we got to come to some sort of agreement or get things figured out. Honestly, man, within the next 48 hours, and I don't want to push you. I'm not trying to rush you whatsoever. But I don't want to lose the opportunity on these other 2 houses if you and I can't work something out. So if you feel like you got to jerk my leg, if you feel like you got to tell me, hey, you got to talk to your wife, and you got to do this, you got to do that, I get it, man. I don't want to waste my time. I'm not looking to waste your time at all either. I think we can come to a number that makes sense and works for the both of us. If not, if you don't feel like you can let me know or we can't create a commitment to each other within 48 hours, I'd rather you just let me know that, because I've got some money already kind of just sitting to the side that I got to use. I'd rather go ahead and use that money on these other 2 houses. I'm sure you can find somebody else to sell your house to, Now, here's why that's important. And I don't mind sharing this because I know everybody else isn't going to do it. All right. One of the big philosophy changes that we had is we stopped trying to hit home runs all the time. We stopped trying to do deals and make 50, 40, 30, 20 grand on every single deal. So now our offer strategy is we will aggressively get to a max offer of a $10,000 or $5,000 profit. I believe in volume. All right. And so by doing that, I automatically know I'm offering almost more than every other wholesaler in my market because everybody's chasing the big hit. I just need to make 10 or 5 grand per deal. Because if I do 10 deals a month at 10 grand a deal, it's 100 grand in profit. I like that. All right. So that's my favorite rebuttal strategy. And then the other piece too, to add to that real quick, is isolating down if their issue is the price. So I like taking whatever their issue problem is, whatever their rebuttal could be. Hey, I got to get my kid from school. Hey, I got to go. And I don't care. Roger, I just got to ask you, man, before I let you go, this interview's been dope, man. I've had a great time. It's been exciting, man. I felt like we dropped some game, for the people, man, and really, done an awesome thing here. But I'm kind of curious, before I let you go, man, I know we're going to talk a little bit later tonight, but, I mean, how do you feel about the price, though, overall? You got to ask these people questions because it always comes to the price. They don't want to say that, but it's always the price. I don't need to talk to my wife. I don't have one. Maybe one of these days soon, right? But I can go talk to my wife, right, and say, like I already know if she's going to be happy with the price, right?
Yeah.
But, hey, Roger, I know you got to talk to your wife, man, and we got to see what she thinks about this before we can sign off on it. Wife aside, man, I mean, how do you feel about the price overall? Is it something you're happy with as long as she's okay in it? You gotta ask those questions to really narrow that down.
That makes a lot of sense. And Chris, finally, how do folks
play a voice clip of a slow clap? Can we just go ahead and just play a slow clap? Oh, beautiful.
I appreciate that.
I don't even own any property. I was about to sell you something. I was like, hold on, I'll have a wife. Hold on. Oh,
no, I love it. I love it.
That was good.
And Chris, what's the best way to get in touch with you? I know you're coaching and you have a coaching program. Where can folks find that online?
Yeah, man. So you can go to startflippingdeals.com. I run Charged Up University. I'm super proud of it, man. Shout out to all my students that are in the U. It's been awesome, man. I started it back last May of 2020. Like I said, we've had over 800 students come through the program in that time period. Right now, I think we've got a little over 400 active students in the program as well. So it's just super dope, man. Startflippingdeals.com. You can find me on Instagram at @ChrisJefferson. Feel free to shoot me a direct message. I'm not saying I'll respond to it, like right away or today, but shoot me a direct message if you want. I'll connect with you as soon as I can. But I'll tell you, I got a lot of dope students, man, a lot of beautiful students in my program that are doing some of the most awesome things that I've ever seen across the country in their businesses and their lives, all age groups, all nationalities. And so it's just been a awesome, beautiful experience, man, to coach people, something I never thought that I was going to be doing. Didn't have any interest in coaching whatsoever. But I love my students to death, man. They're crushing it, doing some awesome, awesome things. So if you're interested in joining the U family, startflippingdeals.com, man. Go tap in.
So, guys, sign up at startflippingdeals.com. And from Roger and myself, we thank you, Chris, for joining us on this middle of the day, Wednesday in March. Thanks for tuning in on Dealmaker Nation. And Chris, we'd love to have you again. Awesome stuff. Awesome
stuff. Let's do it again soon, man. I appreciate you guys 100%.
I had to send you that follow. Make sure you follow on IG, the Chris Jefferson. I already sent you that follow. You don't have to follow back. It'd be nice if you did, but whatever.
I got you, brother. I got you, man. Roger, you my guy, man. We'll follow you back for sure, man. Because listen, Roger, I need some to stay next time I'm in Florida, man. I need sunshine and palm trees, man.
Let's do it.
I know you got me.
We'll talk business at Disney World. It'll be all right.
There you go, man. There you go.
All right.
Thanks, Chris. All right,
guys. Much love.
Guys, thanks for joining us on the live show tonight. If you're on Facebook, make sure to join our Facebook group. It's facebook.com/DealmakerNation. Tons of great content in that group, tons of great people. Make sure you're joining the community, join the network, and learning from other like-minded entrepreneurs. Also on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel. You can find it at youtube.com/DealmakerNation. Thanks for joining us on the show tonight, and we'll see you next.